The Retirement Cafe Podcast, Episode 8, Why You Must Keep Moving in Retirement, the Health Benefits of Physical Activity with Dr. William Bird MBE.
Retired or thinking about retirement? You've come to the right place. Welcome to the Retirement Cafe Podcast. In each episode, we bring you an important conversation with insight, tips and knowledge, all designed to help you live a fulfilling and successful life in retirement. Here's your host, Chartered Financial Planner and Accredited Later Life Advisor, Justin King.
Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Retirement Cafe Podcast. If you're new here, a very warm welcome to the show. And in this episode, I interviewed Dr. William Bird MBE. Dr. William Bird is a GP. For the past 10 years, his mission has been to get people more active, from individuals to communities to whole cities and even countries. As founder of Intelligent Health, his initiatives include health walks, green gyms and Beat the Street, with evidence clearly showing physical activity has more health benefits than any other single intervention. William discusses the importance of physical health and how this can reduce the risk of Parkinson's, dementia and other conditions. William believes our bodies are meant to be active and that we're designed to be connected to nature. In our interview, he explains the importance of understanding the 5 ways to well-being and making them an important part of retirement life. In 2010, William was appointed an MBE for Services to Health and Physical Activity. Then in 2015, he was voted as one of the top 30 most influential conservationists in the UK by the BBC Wildlife magazine and was listed in the top 100 people making Britain a happier place by The Independent. So here's my interview with Dr. William Bird. So I'm really pleased to be joined by Dr. William Bird from Intelligent Health is on the podcast today at the Retirement Cafe. It's been fantastic to get Dr. Bird on the interview and on the podcast because I know that retired listeners are unbelievably interested in maintaining their health throughout their retirement, and Dr. William Bird is especially enthusiastic about this as well. So, welcome, Dr. Bird.
Thank you very much. Yes, really looking forward to this, and very excited.
Great. Well, thanks for taking the time. Would you be able to just give a little introduction about who you are and what Intelligent Health is all about?
Yes, indeed. Well, primarily I'm a GP, and I still am a GP. I still do about 16 hours a week, seeing patients, thousands of them all the time, and enjoy it. I started 10 years ago in a way of trying to get more people active and getting whole communities, whole towns, cities, perhaps even countries more active. I'd set up health walks and green gyms back in the 1990s, and they're both national projects. We have got many millions of people engaged with walking across the UK, and they're all groups of patients who lead other patients on walks. A really simple project, but it really worked. It's got people to the outdoors, and what I found is actually when people were outdoors, it was the social and the natural environment that kept them going and wanted them to come. They wanted to come back. So I then went and worked at the Met Office for about 7 years, looking at the relationship between the outdoors and the weather and health, and did a lot of work on the cold, heat, and all the things. And then went to Natural England, where I set up a natural health service, which is really how nature can impact on health, and then written a book on that. So I've come full circle back again to physical activity, and we deliver a big program called Beat the Street, which I'll mention later, which gets whole cities engaged.
Well, let's touch on Beat the Streets now. I mean, this is a massive initiative. So tell me how did that come about?
Well, when I was doing the health walks, and many of the listeners may actually have been on a health walk in their local area. They are popular, and they're very simple. They're all walks which are very short. We don't make them anything more than about 2 or 3 miles. They're normally fitted in with someone's day and very slow, so you can walk at your own pace. You don't have to walk at the speed of the leader, which is very often the problem with most walks, where you have to keep all together. Here you can string out and you just have a chat with the person next to you, or if you want to be on your own, absolutely fine. But even though there were loads and loads of people, and there were 3,500 of these walks every week, wow, it was still reaching a very small number of the population as a percentage. And what it did was very successfully is stop older people slowing down in their pace as they get older. So it kept people active. It didn't actually make them very much more active, but it stopped that decline that we see after the age of about in the 50s. You see an increasingly rapid decline in our cognitive performance, which is our performance of ability to do normal daily things. And that gets worse and worse. On health walks, it didn't get worse. People stayed exactly the same age as they were in their 50s, all the way through to their 70s, all the way through to their 90s, which is great. But Beat the Streets came about because I realized that we needed something to really shift the whole emphasis onto a population rather than just small groups. And what we've done there is we put smart cards out to all the children, and we use them as bait. So the children get the grandparents and the aunts and the uncles and their mum and dads to become active. And of course, Pester Power is an amazingly powerful thing. If all the family then help that child get their school up the leaderboard by going between these beat boxes we put up around the city, and we can put up 200 or 300 of them, then their school will go up the leaderboard and they'll get prizes. So we send out these marketeers, which are the children, to do all the work for us to get older people on board. And we can get huge numbers. We get in Swindon, in our first day, we got 10,000 people playing. By day 5, we had 32,000 people playing. And then they stay for about 42 days doing the game. And at the end of the game, everyone has said, brilliant, I've been able to walk my children to school. I've been able to walk to the shops. I've found this park I didn't know existed. I've met lots of new friends. I've gone to the badminton class, which they did a promotion, and. So what people are doing in that 42 days, they're rediscovering the area they live in. And that's the whole premise of it.
Well, this is fantastic. And I must admit, I was unfamiliar with it. And tell me, it sounds a little expensive to set up. And did you get government funding for this, or how did this all come about?
Yeah, so far we've done 89 schemes in the UK, and about 6 in Europe as well. Just finished one in Vienna. It's our fifth one in Vienna.
Wow.
And we've reached 960,000 people. So we're almost onto our millionth person, which will hopefully be in February, March. They're set up by NHS or public health. Right. Because the whole emphasis of this is to get inactive people active, people outdoors. But Sport England have given us £3 million, £3.3 million through the lottery to actually match fund any scheme in the East Midlands region or in the Southwest region. And we have to get 650,000 people engaged with that extra money they've given us. Wow. It's £1 a person on the population, so it's not a huge amount. It goes up to about £8 per person who gets engaged, which, in marketing terms and in terms of physical activity is a very low figure. If
people haven't come across these schemes in their local area or their local town or village or wherever they live, how could they find out more about this scheme, and maybe if there isn't one running locally, how can they get involved?
I think from the 3 schemes I've kind of set up, the health walks definitely will be in almost every area.
Okay.
So we'll definitely find those. If you just look on Walking for Health, you'll find a list in your area, and then you can just make contact with the organizer or just turn up to one of the walks that are available, and you'll see them on a website and a timetable. The Green Gym is the other one, which is actually getting people to do conservation work. And again, if you put in tcv.org.uk and then put Green Gym or put Green Gym in, you'll see they are local as well, and they're over 100 in the country, so there may be one near you. And then the Beat Streets, they come just for a short period of time, and the emphasis is for a year. But our next ones are going to be in Scotland coming up, Blaby in Leicestershire, and Leicester itself. They'll be the next 2. And then we're looking for a whole lot in the Southwest. So if you live in the Southwest or live in East Midlands, then go on to the intelligenthealth.co.uk website, and you'll see which ones are coming up.
Brilliant. This is huge. Now, in my experience talking to retired people, they're very concerned about making sure that their vitality is maintained for as long as possible. And I think that's probably the 3 a.m. moment, as I call it. The thing that people worry about as they enter into retirement is that if their health is taken away, it's a big concern. And for a partnership, for a husband and wife couple, if one of them becomes less able than the other, then the dream of that kind of really fulfilling active retirement is wrecked. So tell me about what's your view of kind of keeping active and keeping healthy in the retirement. What are the secrets that you could pass on maybe?
I think we start right back from basics. So as human beings, most of our development has been as hunter-gatherers, and there are three things that a hunter-gatherer has to do. One of them is to be sociable.
Yeah.
The other one is to be connected to the outdoors and a natural environment particularly. And the third one is to feel valued and to feel connected. And then they lead to a very positive well-being if you get all of those three right. And then they will naturally lead to a more active lifestyle, a better diet, and one that doesn't lead to smoking, drinking, and all the other bad things. Now, if we get those three wrong, then you start to get the loneliness problem. You get a problem of having indoor culture, which is bad because you're not outdoors and being active, and you start to feel less value. And when you feel less valued, you start to feel less worthy, and then you start to go spiraling down. So in that group, you can think of the 5 ways to well-being, which is another way of cutting it. And again, it's really important to go to this top end first. So the first one is be connected to people around you. The second one is take notice. The third one is to give. The fourth is to learn, keep learning. And then the fifth one is being active. So the 5 ways to well-being, activity is absolutely fundamental. Now, those are your foundations, and they're absolutely important in retirement not to disconnect from your friends and your workplaces, because that obviously provided a really good example of how you can keep your kind of connections together. Is not to stay indoors, is to make sure you go out for walks, you go out and see people. You don't try and get in the car, but you look at what's around you. Try and keep to either public transport or walking so you can take notice of everything around you. And that's really important for keeping people happy. And then the third one is to feeling valued, and that's having a purpose. That's volunteering, that may be giving. So you make sure you constantly give, because you'll get a huge amount back. So once you've got those things, you reduce the chronic stress and the problems of depression. And from that, this chronic stress goes to something called chronic inflammation. Now, chronic inflammation is where your immune system turns against yourself. So if you're stressed, your immune system starts to attack you. It attacks your heart, it attacks your blood vessels, it attacks your brain. And this leads to all the conditions that we know about: dementia, depression, anxiety, heart disease, cancers. All of those problems all come from this chronic inflammation.
Right.
So I would say the fundamentals, building blocks of a retirement is: have you built up your social network? Are you planning to go out as much as you possibly can for small walks, just for trips, but keeping it where you're noticing, where you've got a good radius around you. You're not getting in a car and rushing off somewhere every time. You don't need to do that. It's getting to connection to your place. And then, are you giving? Are you volunteering? Are you doing something which will help you feel more valued?
Yeah, you touch on something that has intrigued me for a while. That often I'm talking to people who are just about to enter into retirement, and they're becoming the ex whoever they were. So if they were a teacher, the ex-teacher. If yourself,
Yep.
ex-GP. Whatever role that they've had in life has been significant, and suddenly becoming that ex-person. The question is, what did you used to do? Often,
Yeah.
and I think there's a huge shift, isn't it? There's a huge kind of you probably obviously see lots of your patients and people that you work with, becoming that retired person, and I can imagine, obviously keeping fit is hugely important. What do you? I think you're probably some years away from retirement, but what are your view of your retirement? Have you had any thoughts about that?
Yeah, I can't actually imagine retiring. So, I will still, obviously, when I say slow down, that's a wrong word, and never be used in retirement. You don't slow down; you just reprioritize your time. So you may do less of the formal work, but you're starting to do other work, be it grandchildren or be it other aspects. So I don't think this slowing down is a really bad expression, because that's exactly what you don't want to do. But I will reduce my formal work, certainly, but not get rid of it. And if I do have to stop being, the job I've got at the moment in intelligent health, or stop being a GP, suddenly you're on a kind of level playing field of everyone else in the town or the village or the community you're in there. And I think that's a really great opportunity because, yes, you might all have X's of being this or that, but everyone's suddenly on the equality there, and everyone's actually now in the same boat. And what you did actually doesn't count for very much anymore. Who you are does count a lot. Do you have and I think that allows us to know who we are a lot more, and therefore coming into a community and going into going to the pub. I've got this group in our local pub called a Flat Earth Society,
right?
And they have been meeting every Friday for an evening for the last 39 years. So they all had their different jobs, and they all brought their children up, and they all met on Fridays, and they still do. And they're now in their 80s. And I think one of them's unfortunately peeled off there, but the rest of them all meet up, and they are. It gives them that level playing field. And I remember when I had a really good friend in the village, and he was a completely different job to me. But when we met, we talked about things that didn't really matter about what your background is, and it really gives another added value to your sense of well-being and that sense of positioning and place and understanding yourself. So that's important. So I am going to be focusing very much on the local area I'm living, but also on focusing on doing something different, volunteering or trying to set up something new, a new area of my life. And keep learning is absolutely one of the 5 ways to well-being, and I'll be doing that certainly.
I think that's great advice. It's very interesting to ask people. We obviously, you're in the world of giving advice. Helping people have better, healthier lives, and actually understanding how you're going to approach retirement, I think, is very insightful. I met a chap the other day who he's going to do less work next year and then a little bit less the year after that, and then be, in essence, what he says, if we fully retired thereafter in 3 years' time. I said, so what are you going to do? And he said, well, the last 8 years I've been writing down in a little black book all the places I want to go and see, all the things that I want to do. And his was going to be around rugby games, international matches, and he was then going to, whilst I go to South Africa, I'm then going to visit this place, and I'm going to study that, and I'm interested in the history and the culture and the arts, etc., etc. So having this, having some kind of passion or next, the next thing, I suppose, rather than becoming the retired, slowed down, it sounds like a good solution.
Anyone who's in retirement, it's really hard all my life, I'm going to take it easy, is a total disaster. You see those people in general practice having a lovely first 6 months. Normally they retire in the spring. They have the summer to sort out the garden, and they're fully occupied, and they think this is the best thing I've ever done in my life. And then the first winter comes, and they're running out of ideas. And by the next summer, I'm starting to see them with illnesses they'd never had. And you really see it within a year. Those people are starting to get bit of arthritis here, so blood pressure is starting to go up, and it's because they've reduced all those things I've just said. They've shrunk right down, and that is where retirement starts to really be a health problem, a major health problem. So anyone who says, I'm going to take it easy, I'm going to slow down, yes, from a formal work and the stress of that formal work, if you commute to London every day and you don't have to commute to London every day, absolutely brilliant, that's going to take a huge amount, but you're filling your time with other things. You're reprioritizing your time, and you should be as busy as you were, but without the stresses that a workplace often gives you.
And I suppose it does give more opportunity maybe for, in fact, rushed lives and busy lives, which a lot of working people have. Sometimes, I suppose, nutrition can be compromised. It's fast food. Not to say it's particularly unhealthy food, but we can often, we're grabbing food, and retirement may provide a bit more time for actually healthier food choices.
Yes, and I think the dietary side of it is something you can focus more on now, because, as you say, you've got more time, and you can do your own cooking very much. I'm not a brilliant cook, but I'm looking forward to learning when I get older, and that would be something I'd develop. But I mentioned about this inflammation, and this is a new area of medicine where we're starting to understand the immune system under stress or under inactivity or with the wrong diet creates this inflammation. This chronic inflammation you can measure. You can measure it in children, actually, as young as 6. Wow. And that starts to kind of set the kind of course of the adult life of whether they're going to get diabetes or dementia. So if you've got a family history of dementia, people often say, well, what can I eat to make it, to stop it from happening? If I got diabetes, what should I eat to do it? And you'll see now books, loads of them, called the anti-inflammatory diet.
Right.
Because this inflammation aspect is now deep-rooted in not just the medical textbooks, but also the cookery textbooks. And an anti-inflammatory diet is a diet which actually reduces this immune system response. When I say it reduces the response, it doesn't mean our immune system doesn't work for killing off bugs and things. It carries on to. What I'm talking about is the immune system is actually in background whirring away and not achieving anything apart from actually attacking our brains and attacking our arteries. Best way to describe it is you've got a computer, you're trying to do some things, and you're starting typing away, and the word letters come out one by one. In the background, you hear the fan whirring away because it's trying to do something else, which you're not trying to do. And that's what the immune system is doing. In the background, it's really churning away because it's been programmed when you're stressed to actually be alert, but nobody's telling it not to be alert anymore. So it can't function very well on the things it's meant to be functioning on. So the anti-inflammatory diet, it does two things, and we're going to a couple of details here. One of them is, we know all the things, I'm not going to go through them, the vegetables and the fruit and the fact that you've got to have low red meat, and whether you have your high carbohydrates or low carbohydrates, well, you'll get a division in medicine right away through the dietary community, who some of them think it's brilliant to have lots of carbs, some of them who think it's not good to have lots of carbs. I'm not going to get in that debate. It doesn't really matter for your end health. It really doesn't. Right. But what does matter is obviously these are factors of trying to reduce the inflammatory stuff. Now, the inflammatory stuff is sugar. It's highly refined carbohydrates, so biscuits and cakes and all of those kind of things. And alcohol can do it as well, and red meat. So they're the inflammatory parts, and there are a few others as well. So if you have a load of those things, then what happens is it goes in the body, it causes what's called a leaky gut. So it means that the gut itself is not being very well able to protect the blood flow of the little bugs and things getting into the blood system. And when it gets in the blood system, it creates an inflammatory response. So the less you have of sugar, the less you have of a high refined carbohydrates, the less you have of red meat, the less inflammation you're going to cause, which therefore has an effect across the whole body. Now, the other part of that was completely connected is your microbiota, as they're called, the microbiota, which are the bugs in your gut. Now, we know that there's a very strong relationship between the gut and the brain. And it's now thought to be that the little bugs that are in our gut, of which they're about 5 to 10 times more bugs or cells in our gut, which don't belong to us, than there are of our own cells. So we're outnumbered by about 5 to 1 of bugs compared to our own cells. It's a pretty amazing thought that actually there are 5 times more cells in our body don't belong to us. They belong to gut. These little bacteria sitting there are really well designed to help us. They help digest food. They help fend off some of the bugs. They detoxify things. They're really, really important. And the more you have them as a child, and even as in birth, if you have a cesarean section, you have less of them. Right. Then if you've got a really healthy gut biota, then you're actually going to get a really healthy lifestyle, and you're going to be your whole body will be much healthier, and you'll have much lower inflammation. If you've had loads of antibiotics, or you eat the wrong diet, or even if you're inactive, or even if you're stressed, those gut bacteria change and they become less able to help you. And therefore they start to cause problems simply because you haven't got the protection. So this anti-inflammatory diet, when you're eating, is not just to lower calories and to give you nutrition, it's actually to help your whole body recalibrate and readjust.
Right. And other than to increase just on that topic, to increase those the good bugs, I suppose, is there a way of enhancing that other than is that something you can take with supplements or live products such as, I don't know, yogurt or something? Or,
That doesn't do any harm, and actually that probably does do some good. So there's a huge industry now in trying to get this sort of the good bacteria into your into your gut. It's mixed results, unfortunately. There's
Right.
not a panacea where, if you take this, it will be fantastic.
Right.
And they are mixed results. And I would say that, yes, some of the yogurts, which you can have this sort of extra bacteria which are sitting in there, they're not bad at all. They're probably good, but they don't probably do as much good as they claim to do. But carry on taking them. And I think everyone, if you feel they're helping, you're not going to do any harm. What really helps is to try and avoid antibiotics where you can. Now, that may not be possible, of course, and I prescribe antibiotics like every other good doctor when you need them. But if you can try and avoid antibiotics, if you can also try and keep active, funnily enough, because that goes all the way back again to trying to help the gut and eating the right things. So if you eat the wrong things, you actually do kill off some of the bacteria, and they become much more they're less biodiverse. So biodiverse means there's less variety of them, and the less variety, the worse it becomes. Now, one of the researchers in this field actually recommends that we go out and eat soil. Now, I wouldn't probably quite recommend that bit because I don't quite know where that soil, or I know where it's been, but I don't know what's been on it before that. Sure. But in a way, there is a lot of thought that the more dirt you have from outdoors, which is where we were hunter-gatherers, the more connection we have with that, actually the better it is for us. And there's research that says that no single child under the age of 6 months who has been brought up with either pigs, or I think it was mostly pigs in a farm, have ever got asthma.
Wow.
It's quite extraordinary that under that age of 1, I think, or 6 months, that the connection with some animals absolutely protects you from having asthma or other things for the rest of your life. And there's a lot of it is thought because of all this gut and immune system and everything else, and there's dirt and everything else that goes in, is actually really good for us. Really, really good. Spraying Dettol and kind of disinfectant everywhere is probably not great for us.
Right. Very interesting. So maybe I don't need to be as what's the right word? Strict on my young children about washing their hands than I need.
No, get them out there and get them really, really filthy in mud.
I'm just a little particular once they've been feeding the dog, to start eating their tea. But maybe I'm just a bit, Who knows? We obviously grew up and we've evolved, haven't we, over hundreds of thousands of millions of years, and we live in a very different world in the last 100 than we ever have done before.
Yeah. So I think I can mention about physical activity, what that does as well, because I think that's the other part is people think, it's just good for your strength or good for your blood in the brain and gives you oxygen and just keeps you a bit supple. Well, it does all of those things, but actually it does a huge amount more, so much more. There's a substance in the brain called BDNF. I never know how to quite it. It's brain-derived neurotrophic factor, I think it is.
Okay.
And that is a chemical that goes out and repairs different parts of the brain, and it stops it getting all tangled up. And the tangled parts cause both Parkinson's and dementia. So the only thing that releases BDNF is physical activity. So if you become active, you release BDNF into the bloodstream, which goes into the brain, and that detangles on a kind of ongoing basis anything that's got tangled up.
Great.
If you don't get that for a long period of time, it becomes undetangled. You can't do it anymore. And that leads to dementia and leads to Parkinson's. So physical activity is one of the most potent, by far more important than doing Sudoku and other things. So they've tested brain power of constantly doing crosswords and things like that. And physical activity is so much better at preventing dementia. So much better and forgetfulness and everything else because of this chemical called BDNF. And
one of the things that I've become aware of talking to retired people is that there is in the health aspect, I think that as you get older, you do get some muscle wastage. There's a natural reduction in muscle power, and so of course we've got the aerobic fitness of being able to maybe go for a long walk or possibly for a run, etc. But actually doing some kind of strength training could be really useful as well.
Yeah, there are lots of different types of physical activity. We probably should just cover them all quickly. And you've quite rightly said strengthening is really important in older people. So when you get very old and you're in a chair a lot of the time, because that's inevitable when you've got functionally, it's more difficult. To get out of that chair without using your arms is a really good test that you've actually done really well.
Right.
So if you have to use your arms, and that is all because of the strength, the core strength, the arm strength, the leg strength. So strengthening muscles, and there's something called a grip strength, which is a really good test, a very quick test. So you're completely right. There's something called sarcopenia. Sarcopenia is the lack of muscle, and muscle diminishes as we get older. It doesn't have to diminish as fast as we make it. So it can actually stay fairly well balanced if you keep those muscles active. It is the walking that will do some of it. It will be climbing stairs. It will be carrying your shopping. It will be doing a bit of gardening. You try and mix it into everything. So you're lifting things and you're moving things around. To an older person, you should never stand up and start helping them out on things. You should be the real nasty, horrible person and say, yeah, you go and do it yourself, because that would be that's tough love. That really is, because the sooner you get down and stop being active, your body is already falling apart. And when you get the osteoporosis. So the other three parts, there's vigorous activity. So that's where you get out of breath. And it's slightly different from the normal kind of moderate activity. So moderate activity is when you're just a little bit, breathing heavily, but you're able to keep a conversation going and you're otherwise okay. Vigorous activity is when you actually get real kind of out of breath. And that's good for depression and diabetes prevention.
Right.
If you have, and you should be doing about 75 minutes a week on vigorous activity.
Okay.
And that even as an older person.
Okay.
Now, it would take less to get you out of breath, so you're having to do perhaps less activity to do that, but it's still 75 minutes. You have to do 150 minutes of moderate activity, and that moderate activity is the walking we've talked about mostly, but anything like dancing, walking, playing bowls, anything that just makes your heart rate go up a little bit. And then there's a sedentary behavior. And nobody quite knows what that limit should be, but if you're sedentary for a long period of time, your muscles fade away, your bone fades away, and you also start to get problems with this inflammation. So you get this inflammation coming through. It's because all your little mitochondria, which are the little batteries in every cell of your body, should be kept going all the time. They're designed to keep going. If they slow down, because they're batteries, they're all charged up. And if you charge up your mobile phone and you leave it overnight, an old one, because the new ones will cut out, but the old one, you used to pick it up and it used to be quite warm. And if you overcharge a battery, it becomes warm. That warmth is because electrons are leaking out of the battery into the inner part of the battery and causing damage. Exactly the same things happen in our body. The little batteries, they're about 30 to 40 in every single cell of the body, keeps us going. They're based on electricity. We are run on electricity, believe it or not. And we all charge up. So if you're sitting there doing nothing, all those little batteries are charged up, and then nothing happens because you're still sitting there. And hour after hour after hour, you sit there. So these electrons, which are called free radicals, which people probably have heard of those better than electrons, they leak out and they cause damage to the mitochondria. They cause damage to the cell, but worse, they cause damage to the end of the chromosomes, and that means the cells start to die earlier, and you start to lose more brain, more muscle, more bone, more heart, more gut. In other words, you age more quickly. Wow. So sedentary behavior is really bad. Really bad. Up and about as much as you can. Yes, you can sit down for a couple of hours, perfect, but then get up again and try and move around, but don't sit down for 6, 12 hours, which probably a lot of us do at work anyway, and we shouldn't do. But as you retire, it's much easier to do that sitting.
Certainly, this is just amazing advice, I think, for the, not just for the retired community, but for the population, really. I mean, health, the keeping active, getting your diet right is huge, which is obviously where your passion comes from, with all the green gym and the health walks and the beat the streets and everything you're involved in. And intelligent health is, you're obviously passionate about it. So, is there anything, we'll put in the show notes exactly where we can find out some more information in those websites that you kindly mentioned before. Is there any kind of last message that you'd like to leave the Retirement Cafe podcast, around this subject?
I think all of this has to tie into being actually quite happy and be happy with what you've got. If you try and live your life and then put all these extra, right, I've got to do my exercises this morning. I've got to eat this, horrible dietary stuff, which I hate. I've got to go and meet somebody I don't want to meet. You're never going to keep that up. So the physical activity and the diet should all be part of a really fantastic, exciting new part of your life. And it should be a consequence of that happiness or even a means to the end to that happiness. But the happiness should be the goal. That's what you're aiming for. And actually what you'll find is that to become happy, physical activity helps you get there. Eating a really good diet helps you get there. Meeting new people, learning new skills, all of those help you get to that happiness. They're not extras you do. They're all part of that final destination to be really content and happy. And that's what I'd say is the last thing. Don't let these things be add-ons to your life, because they'll never stay. Because none of us have got that, or some of us might have that discipline. But if I had to do exercise every morning, how many times have I said I'm going to do press-ups every morning for the next 25 years? And after about a week, I forget to do it, because it's not built into anything I enjoy. So if I was doing that with a few friends and we were having a competition and we had a drink afterwards, I'd go off and do my press-ups definitely every week.
Yeah.
But that's how you have to do, built in everything into happiness, because that in the end should be the ultimate goal, not health. Health is a means to happiness rather than happiness is a consequence of health. There is a connection, but let's put happiness at the top.
Brilliant. That's been absolutely fascinating, Dr. Bird. Really, really great sage advice. And as I say, I'll put all the links in all the show notes. Thank you so much for your time today.
That's okay.
To pass on this wisdom. And I look forward to speaking with you again soon.
Thanks very much indeed.
Pleasure. A big thank you to Dr. William Bird for joining me for episode 8 of the Retirement Cafe podcast. I found that discussion absolutely fascinating. And, for someone like myself who's not quite at retirement age, just this inside knowledge that keeping fit and active is going to be the most successful thing that I can do to make sure that I have a great retirement. You can find the show notes for this episode along with some useful links at theretirementcafe.co.uk. You can let me know what you think about what we've discussed in this episode by sending me an email to jk@mfpwealthmanagement.co.uk, or you can connect on Twitter at JustinKingCFP. If you've enjoyed this episode, please leave me a review on your favourite podcast player, where you can also subscribe so you'll never miss an episode. Until next time, this is Justin King, helping you feel more informed in your retirement.
Thank you for listening to the Retirement Cafe podcast with Justin King. To find out more, you can find us online at theretirementcafe.co.uk.